So hello everyone, in this video we'll be understanding 5 concepts you must know in React.js. So let's start that. First of all, what is React.js? React.js is a JavaScript front-end library which is used to build user interfaces. It was developed at Facebook and later used in their products like Facebook, Instagram, etc. So basically it is a JavaScript front-end library by which you can create beautiful interfaces in reusable components. So the first concept that we are going to understand is JSX. JSX stands for JavaScript XML, which is the way of representing UI elements by JavaScript. It is kind of similar to normal HTML elements, but has some differences. So you can see this is something called JSX. It is kind of similar to HTML, but has some differences. You can see uh, for specifying a CSS class, we didn't use class attribute here. We use class name because class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript, so we cannot use that. Similarly, for specifying an event, we specified it like this. So we used on click in a camel casing style. So this is some other differences that you can see here. Also, we cannot leave any component without closing it. It is a must thing in here. So in JSX, we cannot leave any element without closing it. It should be having a partner element closed by them, or it should be a self-closing element. So basically JSX is the way by which JavaScript represents the UI elements. So for example, if you want to create a navbar, you will be creating all the JSX elements and group them in one component. So let's understand what is a component. So a component is basically a JavaScript function or a class. If you're creating a class-based component that returns some JSX. JSX, we understood that. Then these functions or classes can be called to reuse those JSX, and where in our code, anywhere in our code, we can use them. So basically it creates the reusable UI parts that can be used in different places. So you can see the example. The left one is a functional component. We just imported React from the React library by installing React in our machine. Then we use this navbar function. We created a navbar function by using a function keyword. Then we return some JSX. You can see this is called fragment, which returns or which acts as a parent element to other UI elements because we cannot return more than one element in a JSX. So in a function component, we cannot, or any component, we cannot return more than one JSX element. So for representing or returning more than one, we are using this parent element. So you can use div tag as well, but fragments are way better than that normal div. Similarly, you can see that this nabber is also uh, exported in this function. We have exported this navbar as well, and now we are using it in the home page. So in the home function, we are using it again. So you can see that we have created this navbar component and we are reusing that in a different page or a component. So basically this is the way how we can use the components in a React application. We create the components and we use them in different places. So whenever I'll be needing any navbar, so I'll be calling this function only like this, and then that will be presented with this UI, or these JSX will be imported here. So this is a component. Similarly, we also have a class based component which we have here. You can see that. So the way is very simple. We just use uh, return keyword in the render method, and we export this class by extending it from this component is class as well. So first we use this component class, and then we extend that to this navbar class which we're creating here. So this is a necessary step you have to perform while creating a class based component. But majorly we use functional components because we have new features in that, so that's why mainly we use that. But we can use this class based component approach as well to create a component. So this, you can see it as a longer approach, but if you want to use it, so you can use that. And calling of that component is kind of similar to or exactly similar to the functional component. So we call it like this by specifying the function name. Also, we import that in a other component, just like we did here, and then we use it like this, an element sign. So like an XML or a JSX, we can use that. Similarly, we also have a third concept, which is props. Props are basically additional data that we pass to a component. So if a component needs some additional data while calling that component, so we can use that. So you can see we have this footer component in which we are grabbing this name and the year props. So these props are being used in this H1 and in this second heading. So we can grab the dynamic data from the user or from the developer that he wants to add to a component. So earlier we were actually using this component without any props. Now we are using this component, which is the new one, footer, with some props. Now you can see we have passed this as a attribute. We have created this attribute name attribute, and then we are using, make sure the name should be similar to here because name matters here, and then we pass some value to it, then that value is used in this component. So basically we pass the value in the attributes while calling the component, and then that value is reused in the component itself. So in the JSX we can use that value, or in anywhere in the component we can use that. Similarly, we have passed this year with a different data type. You can see that. So it is a string. That's why I encoded this in double quotes, and this one is a normal number type. Similarly, we also have a concept of states. The state of a component is an object that holds some information that may change over the lifetime of the component. It can be created using use state hook in functional components. So basically, use state hook, this one, is used in the functional components to create states, but there are other ways in class based component. So we'll not be discussing that because functional components are the most popular ones, so we'll be going with this one. You can see this is an approach of use like creating a state. State is kind of a variable, you can say, that we can use in our component, and then that component will change itself if we change the value of the that state. So basically we created this count state, let's say, and we also create a function that will change the state. So by encoding this or wrapping them inside a square bracket, after that we use this use state method from the React. We imported that here, and then we provide an initial value to it. Then that initial value will be the default value to this variable, this count variable that we are using here. Now you can see this one. So now we'll see in the browser counter 1. So 1 will be the initial value. But we can make use of this set count function as well, or set count method as well, to update this state. So to update this state, we basically uh, can do this anywhere we want. I have created an event here, on click event, and inside that I have created a function, an arrow function. Inside that we are changing the state. So I'm changing this count state by 1. So I'm incrementing that. So the previous value of count, the state, plus 1 will be the updated value for this variable. So that will change this, or the component will re-render whenever the state is changed. So that is basically the concept. Similarly, we also have class-based component. In that we create states differently. We create a state object, and then we create different properties to them, and then we update that. So that is basically the different concept. We'll not be getting that in here. The last concept which we have is component lifecycle. In React, each component has stages during its life cycle. Basically, from our code, like whenever the component is rendered inside a browser, it has a life cycle. So just like a normal water life cycle we have, so that's similar to that. We have a component life cycle, generally referred to as React components life cycle. There are different phases in the life cycle. So just like in a human have different life cycle. So first we were like we were baby, then we grown up as a teenager, then we were adult, and then we were old. So similarly, we also have a component life cycle. Then we also die. That is the main part. Similarly, we also have a component life cycle in React. For every React component, we have these phases. So first is the mounting phase. The mounting phase occurs when the page is rendered or the component is rendered in the browser. So first time it is the mounting state or the mounting phase. Then it comes into the updating phase when some state is changed inside a component. So whenever we change something in a component, in a state or a component of a component, then that is updated. So that component re-renders. So that is the updating state. Then we also have an unmounting stage or a unmounting phase in which the component is removed from the browser. So basically it is uh, not there. So when the component unmounts, at that time also we have this life cycle phase. So at that time when component leaves the page, at that time we have this unmounting phase. So in the class-based component, we use some methods to access all these phases. So basically the first mounting phase, if you want to access or execute anything, any code at the time of mounting, we'll be using component did mount method. Similarly, we'll be using component did update when we want to execute something when the component is updating or re-rendering basically. We also have this should component mount, which decides whether the component will uh, execute something while unmounting. And similarly, component will unmount is also there. So both of them are kind of similar. In functional components, this life cycle is handled by uh, this use effect method or use effect hook. Basically, this single use effect hook uh, does all these things which is there in class-based components. So let's have a comparison here. You can see we have this component did mount method. So in a class based method, we have this component did mount, which is kind of similar to use effect. When we provide an empty dependency to a use effect hook, at that time this will execute only one time. So this will execute at the time of mounting. So both these methods will be executing at the time of component mounting when component mounts in the browser. Then we also have a component did update similarly, which runs on every update, or we have some dependencies. If we don't provide any dependency, so it will run on every update. So any kind of a update happens, then this method will execute the code inside this bracket. Similarly, this will do something. Similarly, we also have some dependency. We can provide some dependencies here. Dependencies are the variables on which you want to like depend this function. So this function, this method will be dependent on that variable or any kind of dependency you can provide. If that variable or that state is changed, then this use effect function will execute. So this is kind of dependent, but this one will execute on every render or every update, you can say. This one is should component update, which is kind of similar to unmounting. When the page is unmounted, at that time it will return true or false. Basically the default value is true, so it will return true that whether this should be executed or not, and it will return false. If we return false here, so it will not execute anything while like if something is happening when updating, when mounting, at that time it will not execute at the time of unmounting. Similarly, we also have component will unmount. This runs on unmount basically. So in this we can decide whether to run something on unmount or not, if you return true or false. But in this will definitely execute the thing if something unmounts or the component unmounts basically. So it is sure that it will run when something is returned, or like when component is unmounted from the browser. So basically this is the concept in the React.js. I know all these things are hard, but you can consider learning in the detailed manner by grabbing our course in the playlist. You can see the playlist in the YouTube channel, React.js playlist, and inside that you'll learn all these concepts in the detailed manner. So if you want to learn React.js in the detailed manner, definitely check out our courses and the YouTube channel, definitely. So let's meet in the next video. Thank you for watching.